The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's session. Just going to wrap up the requirements management piece today, show you a couple of features that you may not be aware of. And as always, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type those out. I'll try to answer them towards the end of the session. And I've been getting really good feedback. So if you want to talk one-on-one, just feel free to reach out to me and or the support team. So thanks again for joining. Today, again, going to wrap up requirements management. And so to get started, I'm actually in the admin right now. And I'm going to show you a couple of features regarding the baseline as well as the change management piece. So these are usually features that are not enabled by default. So once you enable these, you're going to get a couple of new views inside Dev Suite. So in the requirements management piece, we're going to have these new panes right here, the baseline view, as well as this change request view. But before I show you those, just want to go into a specification. So I'm going to go into a specification and kind of show you this guy right here, the versioning. And so the versioning, what this guy does is it will take snapshots of your updates. So for example, if I do an update on any of these fields, actually you can specify which fields will trigger that snapshot automatically. So if I update a field here and I save it, then it could potentially automatically take a snapshot of that um, in the version tab. So as you're making changes, you can always roll back to previous changes. So if or just kind of view what was there before. And so you can kind of see this is in an older snapshot. It doesn't have that update that I just did. But if you wanted to, you could roll back to that version or that snapshot. Okay, so that's one thing. So that's, every spec you can do that um, individually. Okay, so what the baseline view does it actually takes snapshots of multiple specifications. So if I go into the baseline view, I can actually create a baseline by doing something like this. So I click on this button right here, and I can just hit new, and I can say, baseline for February. Okay, so today's the 26th, but I'm just going to go ahead and name it like that. And then down here, you would specify what you want to capture. Let's say I want to capture the entire product at this point in time. I can go ahead and, just specify the root folder and it'll capture everything underneath. And I can also use queries that I created. So I can do just give me all the specifications or give me all the requirements. And by the way, these guys are custom queries that I created already. So I'm going to, go back real quick here. So these queries up here, if you did a search right here using that search icon, you can actually save whatever query you want to be used for the future. So what I did was something really simple. I created a query that will only give me the requirements and another one that only gives me these specifications. Okay, so that's where the queries are coming from. Ad hoc would be, kind of defining the same thing, but the same thing as the magnifying glass here. So, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do a new one here, and we're gonna call this, baseline again. Oops, baseline February 2020. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and just use a query for now. And then before I do that, I gotta actually specify the folder. So I'm gonna include everything. I'm gonna hit OK here. All right, and then so save this. And so what this is really doing is it's capturing all of these specifications or requirements at this point in time. So as you're making changes in the future on these requirements and specifications, you can later on compare the differences. So let's just say, we're in March. I could create another baseline in March and compare, what is everything that's new in March versus February. So that's what that guy does for us. So if I'm looking here, this is the current baseline. So it includes all of these different specifications. that I selected. So it's pretty much everything within this product. Okay, now as I'm making changes, let's find this guy right here, simplified, search windows. I'm gonna go back into the pane right here, and let's go make an update. So I'm gonna go ahead and update this. And so what should happen in this baseline view now is it should actually um, give us a different icon. I hope this works. Yeah, so it gives us a different icon indicating what's current. So I'm actually not comparing different baselines right now. I'm comparing what's there right now currently versus our February baseline. So right now it looks like something has changed. It's that spec that I just changed, and it gives a different icon so that you'll know which one has changed. And you can always go under the differences tab and you will see in red the difference or the change that I did. So that's how you're able to kind of see what's new or what's been changed um, against any given baseline. So it's very helpful. I always recommend this to for teams to, let's just say, provide this list to um, their QA teams, perhaps, right? So let QA know what's new that needs to be tested. So it's pretty useful in that scenario. And then lastly, in this baseline, we can also, just real quickly, we can also compare against other baselines one by one as well. So there's reporting on this. So instead of looking at all of these different ones, we can actually just give me the list of differences um, instead of just looking at these individually. Okay, so that's the baseline view. Going back into the list view here, you may notice that I included something called a changing flag. So it has a little red flag. And what this guy is it will actually mark all of the um, items that have been changed. So what this means is if I go into development, let's say that spec was being implemented right now, or it's being tested currently, and then you're making a change to the spec while it's being implemented or while it's in test, then you could potentially notify the teams that it's actually undergoing an update. Okay, so what I'm looking at right here is, this spec 17, and then all these related, or all these other specs as well, but they are currently undergoing implementation. So I flipped over to development, and you can kind of see it actually flagged the development team that, hey, wait a minute, this spec might be undergoing some kind of change or some kind of update. So let's talk first before we proceed further. And similarly, you can do that for any testing task too. So I'm inside testing, and you can notice that there's flags there. To add these flags, the first thing you would have to do is just go into customize your list view, okay, and then basically it's this little system parameter right here where it's called the changing flag, and I believe inside development, it's the same thing. All of these are the same. So if I go and customize the list view here, I just add the flag. Okay, and then similarly with testing, it's exactly the same. So you want to add that flag there. But how do I go about, creating this flag? So I'm going to go ahead and go to this guy right here. And there's something, so if you can enable events inside the requirements management piece. So events are kind of like your to-do list, a list of tasks, right? But also we have our change flag event in here as well. So these guys right here, changing flag event, that's a system one that's always there if you enable it. Then you can have potentially other events or other tasks. So you can create as many of these as you need to. Let's say you want to do meetings, you want to capture some design activity, those kind of events can be created. But if I go and do this, a changing flag event, and it also has a status right here, open or closed, then it will actually create that flag. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here. And so now we have a change flag. And if I go back into, I'm going to go ahead and save this. If I go back into the requirements piece and just kind of refresh my list, then I should potentially see that guy right there. So that flag So it basically just creates that notification for any linked items um, that are associated with this particular spec. Okay, so that's again, at a individual basis. So just like the versioning, you could do these one by one, but a better approach might be to use the change request view, and that allows us to have the capability of doing multiples. So if I go into the change request view here, I could potentially create different folders here to group my changes together. But essentially, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and create a new change. So I'm going to just call it specs that need updates, something like that. And again, you have a person that's responsible for this particular change. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that, and then give it a workflow state. So that's all customizable there, the workflow. Okay, so now that I have my change, then I can now associate specs to this change. So I'm just gonna pick a handful here, and again, you can use queries to find what you're looking for. You can filter by different folders and whatnot. So I'm just gonna say this list right here of specs need updates. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and link those, and it's gonna automatically create that change flag for us. Okay, so you can choose not to create the change flag, but by default, it's all checked off. So it will create that change flag event. So I'm going to hit submit here, and now I have a group of specs that are undergoing changes. Okay, so now the next thing you want to do here is, since these guys are in a change request state, instead of doing the updates inside the task list view, you would actually be updating directly within here. Okay, so as you're making updates and you're saving them and whatnot, it will basically get created or get updated in the list view. So you're not modifying, you're not going into the task pane here, and you're not going into 29 to make the updates, but instead you're doing it directly in the change request view. Okay, so I'm going to go in and it could potentially create an automatic version again. So that again is a feature that could be enabled. But now all of these items that I selected will have that change flag. And so if I click on the parent again, the change request right here, I have different states. So I'm going to just move it to pending real quick. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then finally, let's just say, I updated all of these different specs, and now I'm going to go ahead and commit them. What it will do is it will notify, it will actually commit and remove those flags too. Okay, so let's just say, after you made all these changes, the teams are notified, then we could potentially close all of those flags. Okay, so yeah, one by one. Okay, so once that's closed, I believe these flags should turn green for us. Yeah, so the flags now for those 29, 30, and 28, anything that's related in here, it will clear those flags. Similarly, I believe, you can manually do this as well. So under, actually, I'm not sure about that, but similarly, you can clear those flags as well. Let's just say after you acknowledge the change, you can potentially clear those flags. But yeah, that's what the change request view is. Okay. All right. So the last piece I wanted to show you in today's session is the roadmap view. So the roadmap view allows us to basically, at a very high level, kind of determine, when we're going to implement these different specs or these different features, if you will. So up here on the top, you basically want to select the date range. So it looks like, I selected this month right here, February 2020, and it basically will give you 3 months at a time. So we have January through March, and then April through June. But down below here is a list of all of your specs and requirements, and they're in a card view. So it's kind of like the list, but they're represented as cards. And again, you can use queries to kind of search for what you need. So I'm going to do the specifications one, and that would just eliminate all of my requirements in there. And then you can begin, kind of dragging and dropping into these things right here. So it looks like I have an issue. So I'm going to go ahead and do no query here and kind of bring that out. But you can drag and drop into kind of like the time frame that you think this feature is going to be released. So yeah, that's why it's called that roadmap view. So kind of at a very high level, just allows you to see, where things are going to be done. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. And I think I've covered everything. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to show here. So we have our change flags, roadmap. Let me see if there's anybody that had any questions. And I apologize, this is going to be a short session today. There's not much more. Going forward, the next session that I'm going to start covering would be the development module, and then later on the testing modules. So stay tuned for that. And then, I'm going to wrap everything up to show you how we can do the entire traceability. So right now we're only working with requirements and specs, but at the end of all this, I'm going to show you how that traceability appears when you use all of these different modules. So thank you for attending. It's a short session today. And as always, these are recorded. Our support team are recording videos too on how you can configure some of these things I'm showing. And they're short 5-minute videos that could be found on our YouTube channel. So thank you again, and I'll see you next time.